Before I show you the repair process of the Sega Genesis, I thought I'd give a little PSA on old linear power adapters, or I call them wall warts. This is the original power adapter that came with my Sega Genesis in 1991. Can't really see it too well because of the black lettering, but it's supposed to output 10 volts at 1.2 amps. It no longer does that. It outputs a lot more than 10 volts at 1.2 amps. And this right here is the power adapter I got with my Sega CD in 1995. And this one's supposed to put out 9 volts at 1.2 amps. It no longer does that either. And I'll show you what it puts out. Okay. So, if you look at the meter here, this, there we go. This is the original 1991 power adapter, putting out 14.23 volts. And this will be the second newer power adapter. This one is putting out 12.42 volts. You may ask, why are they putting out more voltage than they did when they were originally created? Well, both of these are unregulated DC supplies. Basically, they have a fat linear transformer in them that converts AC 120 volts in this case to AC 9 volts, well, a little more than that, and on this one probably 11 or 12 volts. And it uses a bridge rectifier to step it down to 9. Well, what the problem is the secondary windings in these transformers short together over time, because they're basically the only thing insulating the windings from themselves is the infinitesimal lacquering that's on them. And if you ever pull one of these apart, you'll see that the lacquer starts glopping up in certain places and shorting in the other places, and it only gets worse over time. So never use these when you're powering your old consoles. Make sure you get one of the more modern, smaller linear wall warts. And switching mode power supplies, excuse me. I don't have any on hand in here to show you, but I do have one that I rigged inside this thing. This originally was a linear power supply, but it suffered from the same problem. It originally was supposed to put out 13.8 volts to charge batteries, but it was putting out like 24 volts. So I got one of those cheap switching power supplies, and you can see it inside there, and I just attached it to the output right here. And how I'm getting power for this console is I have a buck regulator in line that drops it down to about 8 volts. This puts out 12 volts. So remember, kids, don't use these things, and check them first. And another thing to note is that the Sega Genesis doesn't use what is now standard, where the center is positive and the outside is negative. The outside is positive and the center is negative. So if you plug in a normal, modern power supply into your console, you're going to blow it up. So make sure you have the polarity right on these things. So I made another trip to the dump today, and I found this poor little Sega Genesis, which had been obviously abused. It looks like it had been underwater in the front of it. Taking it apart. Bottom's completely covered in rust. I threw both shields away because they were just destroyed rusty. Here's the top of the case. I'm guessing it was like sitting in water like this. And Cash America originally had it, I'm guessing, and wanted $80 for the system. Doesn't have a date on there. Come on, focus! Doesn't look like it wants to focus. Yeah, there's no date on there. But I got it for the grand total of $1. And I knew there's something wrong with this from all the little rusty bits falling out of it when I shook it around. And yeah, it's pretty rusty. There's a slot. It looks in okay condition. But the rest of this is just cancerous amounts of rust. So I'll have to try and clean this up the best I can. And it looks like some of these caps have leaked. So I'm going to have to replace a few of those. Ideally, I'd replace all of them for a system this old. It's either a VA... Come on. VA5 or VA6. It's the original fat Sega Genesis. I'll be back after I do some cleaning on this and we'll see what it looks like. So after cleaning off a whole bunch of rust, I finally get to see the board, and it's not in good shape. A lot of the conformal coating has gotten eaten under, and you can see these black areas all along here were once copper traces. So I'm going to have to run quite a few bodge wires on this thing, assuming there's no shorts to ground. A lot of the chips look okay. There aren't any ones that look too bad, except this one up here, which is a Sanyo part. Not exactly sure what it is. And on the Zilog Z80 right there is the sound chip, or the sound CPU. And this switch right here, I mean, it's completely rusted, so I'm going to have to find a replacement for that. The reset button feels okay, but I don't trust it after it's been underwater, and the sound slider is in decent shape. It's going to need some cleaning up because the copper on the inside is corroded. Probably going to have to find a new headphone jack or just completely remove it because that's completely trashed. And I've pulled one of the game ports off to look at it, and a couple of the traces came with it, even being really delicate, so I'm going to have to run some bodge wires for that, probably go from up here and wrap around to the bottom of the board. Just getting solder on those is not going to be easy, and still have to take that one off to see under it, because you can see they're quite corroded. These are custom Sega chips. They look decent. Some deoxit will probably clean them up. The cartridge port looks okay. Again, I'm going to try and clean it up and see what I can do. And the RF modulator is going to come off, and so is that connector, so I can clean it. And I'm probably going to do a S-video mod to this to get some decent graphical output out of it. But that's later on down the road. First I got to see if I can fix all this damage to this board. I'll be back a little bit later once I can get most of this cleaned up. Whoa, that was a lot of work. It took about 4 hours to clean this sucker up. You can see where I scraped off all of the bad conformal coating and did some trace rejuvenation. All of these capacitors right here were bad. They had leaked. Some of them had corroded legs that had just fallen off. And this chip right here I had to pull out and put in a socket because all of its legs were all corroded up. Had to pull the switch out and rebuild the switch because I didn't have anything in my bone pile of parts over here. And both of the regulators were bad, and they were probably bad because someone had tried to turn the machine on when it had all that water corrosion in there. I have one of the controller ports plugged back in, the one that had the least amount of damage. This one is going to need some trace reroutes because 3 or 4 of the pads have gotten corroded away. But after all that work, she works. Sega. See if the controller works. I haven't tested it yet. Looks like the controller works. I don't have the reset switch on yet because the reset switch was having issues. So I'm going to go back to the menu. That's about it. Oh, and if you ever work on one of these things, remember that the power is center negative. Because if you plug in a modern power adapter, most of them are center positive, and you do that, you'll blow the thing up. So just make sure, if you're using a modern power adapter with 9 volts, to chop the cable off and reverse the polarity. Well, here's her all back together. And Streets of Rage 2. Didn't have a S-video connector, so I'm hot rodding it with just wires stuck in the AV port right now. Let's see, one thing that wasn't working. Alright, well, looks like the reset button worked. I had to replace that. The on-off switch button works, and I actually got the front audio connector to work. I can shove that in there, unplug the back one. Turn it up. Sounds pretty good. That about wraps it up. Thanks for watching.